Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the Swimrun Show podcast. This week we've got very special guests, two guys who have just done a lot for swimrun. The growth, the education, and competing as well at a good level across the US and the world champs over in Sweden. It's Chris and Chipper, the Low Tide Boys. If you've not heard of them, check them out. They have the original swimrun podcast called the Low Tide Boys, and they're great guys, and loads of content on their website and their pods, of course. Looking forward to diving into that one. Big shout out to everyone who took part in the One Water race. If you've not heard of it, look it up and you'll work out why we all need to shout out to anyone who took part. 7 teams on the start line in the end. The winners, our tip for last year, which didn't go as well. This year, winning, it was Team 6, Sweden, Australia. Adriel Young, the Australian guy, we had him on the show a couple of weeks ago. Daniel Hansen and Kristen Larsen, our favourite couple. And Johan Hasselmark, who was on the boat in support and doing all sorts of stuff, no doubt, behind the scenes. So awesome, guys. 50 hours, 23 minutes of racing through 2 nights. No sleep. I checked in with Adriel after the race some hours later, and I just wanted to check, did you guys actually sleep at all? No, they didn't in the 50 hours and 23 minutes of racing. However, I believe they have slept since. Awesome effort, guys. And to Team 2 Australia, who won last year, and Team 3 Canada, Australia. It was the first time that the One Water race had 3 teams actually finishing. So it was just awesome. Check it out. It's more of an adventure race, to be honest. It's just crazy. And that is that. Well done, Thomas Oganda, for putting it all on. We had him on the show, I don't know, a couple of months ago. Also, there's the World Championships coming up quite soon over in Sweden. First Monday in September every year. That'll be cool to follow everyone on that one. And we have September is a busy time in the UK for racing. The highlight for me is WX Swimrun, of course, in Abu Dhabi, the UNESCO Biosphere. Check that one out. It's about 13.3k of running and 3.5k of swimming. A couple of those swims have some tidal assistance. So yeah, it's awesome, that race. 8th of September. I organise it, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but it is cool. There's loads of other races. They're all on Google, or BritishSwimRun.org has a good list. There's a couple of races coming up imminently in the UK, down on the south coast, Devon, the Wild Running Festival. I believe if you Google that, you'll find a swim run in there. And the Isles of Scilly, Wes Swain from Scilly 60, a great guy, has brought back the Isles of Scilly swim run, which is taking place the weekend of the 31st of August. So check that one out if you can get down there. And then there's loads, in September, of course. Well, there's 2 that my good self is organising, the WX Swim Run on the 8th and the Eliminator Mark II in Liverpool. That's on the 28th of September. That's a Saturday. Check that one out. And there's loads of other stuff going on. So let's crack on with the Low Tide Boys, Chris and Chipper. Here we go. Okay, so we have the Low Tide Boys, the original swimrun podcasters, Chris and Chipper. How are you doing, guys?
Pretty good.
Doing great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming on and inspiring this podcast very much so.
Wow.
So I just want to have a catch up with your racing to start with before we talk about anything else. I know you've had different season to previous 2 years, I guess. You've done three or four. Where are we up to now?
I think we're
This
4. We
year.
did
4 races, yeah.
4 races. Yeah, and certainly not doing the World Championship in a few weeks. So that's been the biggest change, just almost like mentally, and also just from a training load, not having to train as for that course. But yeah, it's been nice to kind of take your foot off the gas a little bit from the pressure of having to do that one.
Yeah, that's something that we discussed. Like, we did it 2 years back to back, and we pretty much just kept like basically a 2-year training cycle on that. And yeah, it was very, it demands a lot. Like, that race is pretty special, but also demands a lot. So we kind of decided, sort of like, before we had the chance to apply for the next year, like, let's just agree that we're not doing it for a third year in a row. And that was, yeah, I think for both Chris and I, it was just really like, oh, we can kind of focus on doing some other races, and yeah, just sort of taking the foot off the gas from like the really intense training that we had been doing for the last 24 plus months for the last couple bids at OtillO.
Yeah, as well as all of the training, the travel, the time away, from the US to Sweden, it's another significant thing, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, from California, it just doesn't make it easy. It's like if we lived in New York or somewhere on the East Coast, we probably would have done many more European races at this point. But adding the extra 6, 7, 8 hours of travel is just not cool.
Yeah. Well, good, awesome effort the last 2 years.
Cheers.
And big shout out to the families as well behind you two guys, because I know they obviously have to support. Yeah. So you've World Series events. You've done Whistler, the debut of Whistler in Canada. How was that? Like, well, I guess I know you guys you do a proper review of every race you do, but maybe just a brief, maybe a learning point, or how was it in summary?
It was great.
Yeah. It's no surprise that we're happy with it, and we'd love to go back. But yeah, I mean, we brought our families out to that one, so that was really a different type of experience for us. So our families have joined for like one pretty local small race that was maybe like 50 or 75 people, but they've never been to an OtillO event, let alone a World Series event. So we were really excited to bring them out and have like a Low Tide Boys Canadian vacation out of it. But yeah, it definitely did not disappoint. A pretty magical area to be swim running in. Yeah, we definitely had a good day out there. Yeah, just another fun swim run.
Yeah, and certainly a different type of swim run that we've done.
Yeah.
I think Whistler, not to turn this into sponsored content for OtillO USA, but like, it's very accessible, but also there's just a lot of nature. And it felt like at once like an urban swim run, similar to your like sort of Liverpool swim run, because you're in the village, you're kind of running through town, and then boom, now you're just like in the woods, in the mountains, like looking out for bears. So you really got a little bit of everything. And it felt like, interesting way, if you've never been to Whistler, to sort of check out all the lakes in Whistler, check out the town, and then check out some of the really cool sort of mountain biking trails and stuff. And it was certainly on the level of difficulty was up there. Some really hard sections, some long runs, exposed runs. It was unseasonably warmer, but some of the lakes were super, super like ridiculously, shockingly cold. And we weren't really sure which one. I mean, we had a sense of one of them was definitely going to be cold, but then there was a sort of surprise lake that just kind of like you jumped in, you're like, woo, one of those things. But yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah, as Chipper mentioned, to have our families out there was always fun. My son was really disappointed that we didn't finish first. Like, he was like inconsolable, which was like, I'm not sure what I'm doing as a parent, or just like setting unreasonable expectations for him. But yeah, it was super fun to have them at the finish line and see them along the course. It just really, and I think from their side, like, we love the community. A lot of people know us. Obviously, we put out the show and we try to be helpful to make sure people have a great experience, but to have our family sort of tag along and sort of witness those interactions, I think was really cool because, if anything, it buys us runway for the show, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, people
Yeah.
actually listen and value this, so maybe we could do the show for another 6 months or something like
Yeah.
that.
Our wives
Yeah.
are like, oh, they do have people, they do have fans, they do have listeners. I guess
Yeah.
we can let them do another 6 months of this, I suppose.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, that element of the city and then the kind of the woods and whatnot it sounds a little bit like Caen in south of France.
Yeah.
But probably not as remote on the running bits. But yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then go on.
Oh no, I was just gonna +1 Chris's point of like the variety of trails, bike path essentially. Yeah, you just got a little bit of everything. And at what, hey, if you like running roads or that's more your thing, there's a little bit of that. If you're a trail or a hill guy, there's some of that too. So it really gave a lot of variety, and it definitely kept the day interesting, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And then you did Casco Bay not so long ago in Maine.
Yeah, out in Maine on the East Coast. So that's a race that this was our fifth year doing it, and our 20th swim run as the Low Tide Boys, which we weren't keeping track until we found out it was the 20th, and they were like, okay, well that's something notable at least. But yeah, I mean that race, it just never disappoints. It's really the true island to island style. And yeah, I mean, it's a great race. We definitely encourage anyone to give that one a shot. Like that's probably the most authentic swim run in the United States. The day and the weather definitely cooperated. And yeah, we had a little setback. I kind of injured my knee on part of it, so we didn't finish out quite as strong as we started it, but we got it done, and still had a great day out there, and really amazing part of the country.
Cool. And that's not as far for anyone going from Europe. It's not too far.
That's right.
Because
that's right. Maine, yeah, we'd love to see a very strong UK contingent at the race next year. So just plant those seeds to people now.
Yeah,
because it is a super fun race, and if you're trying to, if you're trying to stack some points for the World Championship, if you're on that journey, it's a good place to try to do that while getting to see like a really beautiful part of the country. And as Chipper mentioned, it's like the most island to islandy swim run in America, and I would safe to say it's just the best swim run in America right now.
Okay, cool. Well, I know Chrissy and Bill, Mr. and Mrs. B are planning. I think they said they were planning on doing it next year. So I reckon there'll be a few UK guys over there.
That'd be awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, and so there's a lot going on at the moment. We've just had, not obviously, but the One Water race. For those who've not heard of it, it's a big one. It's 200 and something kilometers of moving with, what turns out to be maybe 70 kilometers of swimming potentially for the winning, our favorite team, the winning team, and lots of running. And that was epic. There was a USA team as well.
There was, there's been one every year, and unfortunately, DNF'd every year, but I mean, it's just such a crazy race. I mean, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around it. I think the coverage every year, they keep leveling up the coverage. And on our show, we've had, Tom Ogender on to talk about the race. He's the race director, and just, to see kind of his dream come true to the point where it is now. It's pretty amazing. And it's, I mean, it just definitely shows what's possible in swim run. Zero interest on my part to participate, but kudos. Kudos.
Yeah,
to
I don't believe that.
Really?
I think honestly, there's no. I think everyone must start like that, because when I first heard of it, I thought, no, that's too much, and every year it's chipped away at my brain. I'm not intending to. I would like to be participating. But it looks like, if we do it next year, I'll be kind of on the boat in the that capacity.
The boat seems like too much for me. Like that seems the hardest part on the boat, like getting ready. Like
I know, I'm not look, yeah, I know what you mean. There's like there's different kind of things. Yeah. So anyway, I want it to happen, and I want a GB team to do it. And so I've set the wheels in motion, and we've had our first one water race training day, and there's a few more planned.
Exciting!
So
That's
watch
like
this
an
space.
exclusive.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a GB team out there. That'd be great.
Yeah. I hope all being well. But yeah, it's epic. Check it out, guys. If you've not seen it, just Google it. It's all there. And then it's a bit. I was going to touch on this actually with swimrun, because it seems obviously us three know exactly what swimrun is and all the variations of it. Yeah, but it still seems, because I operate a swim venue in Liverpool in the docks, and people are still asking me, the same questions, and it seems like it's even more confusing for some people now with the different, because it used to be just more or less, not exactly, but used to be more or less OtillO, and a few other races. But now there's all sorts going on. And there's the My Swim Run Championships in Europe, and I think they had one in America. There's one water race. There's also, so it almost feels like it's getting more confusing to people, and it's still a challenge to get the education out there. I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, well, I think it's confusing in the sense it's like it's still so new to people, and I think for us that are really in it and love it, it's easy for us to be like, how come you haven't heard about this? Like da 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 da. It's like, like the people that know about Pokemon, and they start rattling off. I'm dealing with this right now with my kids. Oh, different Pokemon characters. I'm like, Lechonk, that's like a real thing.
Yeah, the pig, Lechonk.
Yeah, the pig's, it's great, Lechonk, right? But
Right.
but I think with swimrun, I think it's important for us to always keep in mind that it's like, hey, we're still kind of in the golden age, and it's still very small, super niche. And yeah, we love it and we live and breathe it. And there's a big enough corner of the internet where we can get our fix or swimrun fix whenever we want. But I think that's why, your show is super important. And in many ways, our show is important as well, because it's like, hey, this is how people are really discovering. And I think what we always hear is sort of how can we reduce the barrier to entry so that people are showing up to the start line, at least having some idea of what they're doing. And if they have some idea what they're doing, they're likely going to have a good experience, because obviously someone's awesome. And, all you have to do is do one and you're hooked, kind of thing. But it's just getting them there. And I think races like, one water race or some of these crazier Rockman, put that one in there. It's like, it kind of just shows you what's possible, but certainly not what's required. So that's where, speaking of like UK, right? Like as keen as mustard, right? Like Chelsea and Nikki put on like awesome local events that are, the barrier to entry is just so, there's almost like no excuse, right? So it's important to have both. And I think it's on us as, quote unquote content creators in the sport to just always keep inspiring people and trying to lower that barrier to entry. Whether you want to go on OtillO World Championship journey or you're just trying to do your first 5K, I think we need to validate all those experiences and just, keep welcoming people into our tent.
Yeah. Well said. And
no notes.
Good job. On that note, the world, looking ahead to a longer one, of course, the World Championships is going fast, as we briefly mentioned earlier. Any FOMO going on at all?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. Like Chris and I's line this whole year has been like hardcore FOMO, like missing out on the race and the whole weekend and the experience. Not FOMO on the training block. So like, if we can magically be in OtillO shape and be over there, absolutely, that would be amazing. But the break it's been a nice opportunity for us to kind of recharge our batteries a little bit.
Yeah, I've had a couple,
but hard not to miss it.
Yeah, I've had a couple dreams in the last few weeks where it's someone gets sick and I get the call. It's like, hey, do you want to come out to OtillO, like all expenses paid, and do it? And I wake up in slightly a cold sweat, and I told my wife that I had this dream once, and she was just like, no. just like straight no. So I was like, all right, well, there you go. But yeah, it's like similar to Chipper. I think like the experience of OtillO is almost as amazing. Like the community experience is almost amazing as the race itself. If it's like 1 and 1A in terms of quality, and the course is magical. Hopefully, it's going to continue for a really long time. So we'll get an opportunity to go back there in a few years once our kids are a little bit older. But yeah, FOMO for sure. It's hard not to have FOMO. I mean, if you love swimrun, like how could you not love the original race on the original course with all the permutations and tests that you have within that race? I mean, it's just a magical day.
Yeah, it is awesome.
Mike, are you going to be out there this year?
I'm not. I'm actually working. I'd love to, but I was. Yeah, but I'm not. I can't. I'm working that day. I was looking at. I had a couple of tickles from a couple of people who are taking part who their partners are injured, and but I can't do it. So, but yeah, it is one of those races that's so special. And I don't know, because have you guys done Kona? Or
no,
me neither.
We weren't at that level on the triathlon scene.
Yeah, no. Well, because I get the feeling I've spoken to people who do Kona, which was the original. But I feel like once people have done, I might be wrong, and I'll find out soon because Paul Skipper, who I raced with the World Champs, is doing Kona this year, and I feel like people do Kona and they do it and they put it to bed. Whereas I think with the World Champs in swim run, you want to do it every year because it's just so amazing. I don't know if that's true with Kona, but that's how it feels. Like, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, and certainly I definitely understand the people that are like, oh, this is my 4th year, or my 3rd time, or whatever. Like, it's just a continual itch that you have once you've done it once, just to kind of like relive or recapture some magic of that experience. I mean, it was almost, I don't want to say instantly, but it was pretty close to instant after that first one of like, oh yeah, we got to do this again. Like, yeah. So I see how after 2 times or 3 or 4, you're just like, if you want to put the time in to get in the shape to be there, then you should absolutely, it's calling.
Yeah. Jonas Colting, who's done every single one, I just noticed the start line. He'll be there again this year.
Well, actually,
breaking news on that.
I got some breaking news for you. He just announced that he was out on a training workout for the race and he broke a bone in his elbow, so he is out. So his streak of doing every single one is coming to an end this year. So no more, which is just tragic.
That is tragic. Wow. Oh, so
good run though. 18 years is quite
amazing.
Quite impressive.
Honestly, I think we have to give Jonas, as sort of like the unofficial historian of swimrun, right? We have to give him a lot of credit. Like one of the reasons that race survived the early years was really Jonas. At that point, ultra world champ, like multiple world champion, in triathlon, he was helping Michael and Mats. He's like, you got to ditch the life preservers on the swims. This is killing us. Like we're wearing wetsuits. We'll float. It'll be fine. Get rid of the bikes, so I think he was really instrumental in the survival of this race early on. So mad props for him and just like his support of the sport, especially early on. I mean, I wasn't around paying attention to it, but has anyone had a more important role other than outside of like Michael and Mats and stuff to help promote and highlight that race and get people to that race in those early years? So it's a real shame that he's out this year, but his status in sort of the pantheon, whenever at some point there's going to be a swimrun Hall of Fame, he's certainly one of the initial entries, right?
Yeah, 100%. It was nice actually last year. He was cruising at the back with me and Paul, and it was reassuring because we were just wanting to finish, and it was reassuring. So he was just chilling out and thought, okay, it's okay to go at this pace. He did overtake us later towards the end, but it was cool just to race with him, and Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
sorry to hear about the injury and his race partner, no doubt. Well, he's probably got a replacement already, but there we go.
Yeah.
Who knows? I know Adriel was trying to get Max Anderson I know Adriel will be quite tired now, but he did say he was trying to get Max
Yes.
Anderson to race with him. I don't know how that's gone.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, I think Max he's last time I chatted with him, he was really about like, no, I'm legit taking a year off. Like no one's gonna pull me off the bench for this thing.
Yeah.
But you
yeah,
know,
I mean,
Attila calls people. Maybe Max
yeah,
is
I mean,
filling the
speaking
call
of
as well.
Attila, there's some really interesting storylines, right? With Hugo teaming up with Amanda. I mean, I think, take this as a hot take if you want. I think they have a chance of finishing first overall, which would be obviously an amazing result for a mixed team to finish first overall. Wouldn't be the first time, like they've done it before. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a super powerhouse team. Kind of reminds me of when Desiree partnered up with Amanda. I think it was for Khan, or I can't remember, it was Engadin, and they just destroyed it. So there's some really interesting storylines at the front for sure.
Yeah.
And then I think this year for the race, another interesting storyline is just how many American teams are going to be out there since the merger of OtillO USA of Odyssey with Attila. A lot of American teams were able to stack a bunch of world championship points. So there's going to be a strong contingent of American teams out there, which I think, it's just good for the sport. I'm sure it'll equalize once, the points, year over year kind of become like more consistent. But so it'll be exciting to see so many American teams out there. And hopefully that helps kind of build interest in the US and get more races, get the races better populated, and just kind of keep going it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Hugo and Amanda have got a good shout for the overall, definitely. And the Americans, who would your tip be for the top American team, guys?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think so. So Marcus Barton is teaming up with Lars Finanger, so I think they probably have a good chance of being sort of the top American team. But yeah, I think that's probably the only team that has like a top 10 chance from what I've seen. I mean, there's some one water race people. I think Beak is partnering with Kayla.
Yes, from my understanding, that's
So assuming they've recovered from one water race, they'll be a pretty speedy team.
Definitely.
But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, it'll be interesting. It looks like there's five World Series races OtillO in the US now, and that's more. There's only 4 in Europe, which is quite a shift. Do you think it could? Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, how many American teams get to the World Champs next year as well? But it's just you've got to grow it, haven't you? You've got to grow the world. The World Champs has to include all the world. So it is a cool kind of development for sure.
There's definitely more races, and obviously that with that comes more opportunities to score points. But I think one thing that's important that Chris and I always try to remind ourselves is like, not everyone wants to do the World Championship, just the same as everyone that does a triathlon is not trying to do Kona. I think some people kind of get hung up on like, oh, there's so many more races in the US. It's like, well, not everyone wants to, it's quite a task to head over to Sweden and, do a 12-hour race. That's not everyone's cup of tea. So, but for the people that do, it is nice to have some more opportunities to get those points, to have a stronger ranking in the lottery system.
Yeah, and this is such a large endurance market in the US. I mean, I think in 2020 when Attila came to the US to do Catalina Island race, we thought that was going to be just like and it was, right? It was in the New York Times. A lot of people learned about swimrun in the US from that race. Chipper was quoted in the New York Times article, which is talk about something that we never really thought. Our podcast is like listed on there. I mean, it was crazy. Then COVID hit and that kind of derailed it. And I think, fast forward now, 4 years and change, I think it's like now the US is poised because we got races in different locations. I think the sport is becoming better understood. I still think that there's just so much room for growth. It's ridiculous. I mean, think about California where we live. There's only one swim run. It's a small local swim run. It's a great swim run. But, you think California could probably support three, you know, three world championship or World Series races, you know, alone, right? Just with the amount of athletes all across the state. So, you know, so there's tons of room for growth. And I think OtillO and partnering with Odyssey was something that I was actually talking to Michael and Mats about years ago, which is just like, if you really want to grow it here, you have to have like a US US on the ground presence, because trying to do it all from Sweden or Switzerland, it's just too hard. It's just too hard. So I think now the conditions are perfect to really help grow the sport in the US, and obviously having someone like Lars at the head of that for USA. I mean, no one, you know, besides the three of us, like, who loves swimrun more than Lars, right?
Yeah. I will. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you definitely need the boots on the ground in the US. Yeah, you can't do it from Sweden or Switzerland that well, I don't think. But I will say, Chipper, yeah, of course you don't want to do Kona because it's not that good. The world champs in swim run, they're so good that even if you're just starting out, it's going to become a goal for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, it is that good. But
that's fair.
Even just the final 15, which I haven't done, which I must do as well sometime, the final 15.
It would be nice to do that race and go in fresh instead of like haggard, like, oh, we're almost there. Like, oh, we can do it. Like, go like, hey, I feel great. Let's go.
Yeah, do the final 15, then support the world champ. You know, just go around as on a boat. That would be cool. On the note of races is I don't know if you guys know, but there's likely to be a new Europe OtillO race released in the next few weeks. Well, I don't know if it's a few weeks, but it's they're strongly they've been strongly looking for a while. But so
that's exciting.
Cool.
Do you know where?
No, I know where they were looking at a few places, but I don't want to say I don't really know. No, I've got a couple of ideas, but looking forward to finding out for sure.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think, you know, the more the merrier, and definitely some of the Portugal races like Tamega. I mean, there's just some amazing swimrun locations, like, you know, in that part of the world, which I think we really well support an OtillO race, easy to get to and stuff like that.
So I want to touch on kit, guys. I know you like a bit of kit.
Happy to.
So, first off, if you were racing the world champs this year, given the same conditions, temperatures in the water, air, wind, etc., any changes in the kit that you used last year, do you think?
Well, this very timely. I know you're a dedicated Low Tide Boys listener, Mike, but we just released our OtillO gear guide there. If you're ready. Good. I appreciate the softball question. I think one thing for me personally that I've really come a long ways on is my tolerance or my confidence, I guess, of cold water. In Whistler, you know, some of those swims were in the 50s, whatever that is, probably low teens Celsius there. And I was wearing the VIG, some with no arm sleeves, some with, and that really gave me a lot of like, hey, I can handle cold water and I can make it through. So the only like consideration I have was maybe go from the Orno X to the Uto potentially, but I don't know. I'd also be really divided on just playing it very safe, because you don't. It's just a long day. It's a long day.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't know if I would really do anything different kit wise from years past. I think, you know, as Chipper mentioned, this episode was just released. I think like the safe bet is always to go with the Orno X, just because in case conditions do change, you slow up dramatically. Like, hey, at least you have that buffer, and it isn't like it's such a thermal suit where you're just going to be sweating buckets the whole time. So it's just a very conservative, safe option. But yeah, I think you know, if we were going back and let's say like air temps were going to be a little bit warmer, I think we probably would both use a Uto or something like that instead, and just kind of go for it. I mean, for me, the big unlock is always just like arm sleeves. Arm sleeves for me help protect for a lot of the cold, especially early on in the race. And you can always take them off, right? So it's easy to just, it's important, I think, in swim run. And this is like general like pro tip advice. It's like, think of your kit as something that's modular, right? Like, especially the arc suits, which are the ones that we use, and they've been a supporter of us since the beginning. The reason they can get away with being so thin is because they seal out water really well. So if you can, if you can keep your core kind of warm and dryish, then the arm sleeves really help you kind of modulate your heat and just protect against the cold. And you swim maybe a little bit faster with your arm sleeves on. There's this. I think thinking about it that way is just a great way to go into a race like this, where it's just like, all right, well, here's these different pieces that I can kind of move around as needed.
Yeah, that is a good word for it, actually. Modular, definitely.
Yeah.
Top tip.
I think on the nutrition front, Chris has been doing this for a while, but bringing the empty flask and carrying with we're a precision fuel and hydration folks, so we'll put like a 1500 in there, roll it up, and then when we're ready for a long run, we'll deploy that, fill it up with water, and kind of use it for the rest of the race. That's something I've not really done a lot of, but I've seen the value in it this year, specifically racing with a flask. Just being able to stay on top of your hydration just helps you perform that much better. So I'm like completely sold on bringing a soft flask with me at any World Series distance race, and even a shorter race, maybe even two for something like OtillO, since it is such a beast.
Yeah. The nutrition feels like it's becoming more like a big topic. Actually, I suppose it always was, but it's definitely the longer races. Yeah, for sure. It's a big feature, isn't it? The nutrition,
for sure,
carrying it.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely don't. I don't feel like I have it totally down and dialed. If we OtillO for a third time, I feel like, hey, I kind of got a little bit better grasp than the other two, and I have sort of at least what I would want to try. But it's a lot of gut training to be able to tolerate such a high amount of carbs per hour and gels and figuring out what works for you. Just takes a lot of time to kind of really dial that in and figure out what's going to make it work on race day.
Yeah. Okay. The arc suits are awesome, aren't they? I mean, I think everyone's different, but I think if you ask 10 swim runners, 9 out of 10 would say they're the best swim run wetsuit. Fact. But just all the features they have. But whatever you've got. But I just find it amazing how good they are, because I've been sent loads of wetsuits since 2014 to try, back when it was no one knew what was best, and it wasn't quite working. Head were doing really pretty good stuff, actually. The Head Aero was a breakthrough with the slightly more flexible legs. But Arc have come along and kind of blown it out of the water,
there's really one person responsible for all that. And, we're talking
Daniel
about
Sand,
sort of the Swimrun Hall of Fame pantheon. I mean, it's really this gentleman, Daniel Sand, who was the head designer at Head and then came to Arc. And it was really, he's the one who's really been pushing the technology. On another level, Christopher Sundberg, who's a swim runner, but he's also just been sort of the financier of ARC. And without his support, we wouldn't have had, these suits just wouldn't get designed and tested and built and stuff. They're the fastest suits, world records, whether it's a triathlon wetsuit or whatever. It's just, I joke, but I've said this to his face, that he's sort of the Da Vinci of swim run, in the sense of just like his creativity for it. It's just incredible. Paddles, suits, pull buoys. He's responsible. His fingerprints are essentially in the whole arc of the sort of the technology, the tech race, the arms race in the sport. His fingerprints are all over it.
Yeah, Daniel Sand. I think he designed the Head Aero, and I'd agree on definitely the wetsuits. I think with the hand paddles and pull buoys, less. I think there's more room for. Argument, would that be the right word? But I like the pull buoys. The hand paddles are good. But there's some good competition, I think, in the hand paddle, the carbon arena, with Frank
The
paddles
carbon
and
is
For sure.
Evolve.
I mean, since we're hitting up all of our supporters, we can't not mention, Frank Paddle, which have also been one of the brands has been supporting us since the beginning. I think what Frederic has done in terms of using carbon, making it really stiff. I mean, that's another thing where he was really the originator of that concept, and now it's almost like if you're showing up at the World Championship without carbon paddles, it's almost like, what are you doing, kind of thing, which is kind of crazy to think how quickly that's happened.
Yeah. Next, it'll be you turn up without carbon plates and your shoes, which is becoming the norm.
That's coming
in some ways.
Yeah, it'll be there in a couple of years.
Yeah. You guys on the Tecton? Who's on the Hoka Tectons?
I wore those last OtillO, and from like a shoe perspective and comfort and plushness, high marks. Grip, low marks. They're using the Vibram like Mega Light, and I think the light part is what's really holding us back on that shoe from a swim run perspective. Just the lugs are a little bit too. I need a little bit more tackiness and a little bit deeper lugs on those, but similar to probably what they have on the Speed Goat, I think would be a better. I was checking out. I have the sickness like a lot of you. I go to the store and check out the new running shoes that the new Speed Goat trail shoes are out there. And I'm like looking on the bottom. I'm like, ooh, this grip's a lot better. So hopefully they put the Speed Goat grip on the Tecton 3s, I think now are out.
Yeah, they're out and they look really different. So the new Tectons
like a sock thing
like
going
a
on.
sock thing, which I don't know for swim run if that sock is just going to retain water or not. So we'll see. I think Hugo is going to be wearing.
He's supported by them, I believe.
So yeah, he's sponsored by them. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But it seems like a lot of material on the new version. But
Amanda wore them as well on Gothenburg. She loved them. Hugo on Gothenburg anyway, he cut the sock off. She left it on. She thought it was fine, but yeah, it was be good watching. See, have a good close look at their feet on the world champs and see what's going on.
If you can keep up, yeah.
When we're behind the start lines, about the only opportunity we have to look at people's feet.
Yeah. Oh, I know that. So, last kit question: the form goggles. Now, would you wear them in a race?
That's a really good question. I think form goggles as a training aid, 10 out of 10.
High marks.
Super, super high marks. I think in a swim run, because there's so many moving pieces, yes, there is an advantage. They have what they call swim straight technology, which essentially allows you to kind of set a bearing and go. It's a little bit cumbersome to kind of like lock in the bearing. And the goggles are pretty expensive. So for a super long swim run, like I'd just be worried about kind of destroying them. But yeah, I think it's just, it would take a lot of practice to kind of streamline your transition process if you're going to use them. And I think like for a race like OtillO, it could be helpful for some of those really long swims just because they're so far away to set like a good bearing. But for some of the shorter stuff, if it's everything's line of sight, I think like you should just sight old school. But totally doable. But I think for us, it would just require like a lot of practice. I mean, speaking for myself, like I think I would need a lot of practice because I mean, they keep improving it. So you used to have to kind of do this thing where you move your head around. You got to like do this 360. You don't have to do that anymore. So they're keep iterating and improving the technology. So it might come to a point where it's like you just put them on set and go kind of thing. That would be way better. But yeah, but I think it's still as a training aid, highly recommend. As a race aid, they are allowed, so it's not like you're going to get DQ'd or something if you use them. It's just a matter of making sure you're how to use them well, I guess.
Yeah, I think the use case for a triathlon race where it's usually like you're swimming in a rectangle or a triangle, like that use case when there's minimal turns and it's only one swim is like I could see the use case being really strong there and getting great value out of that. We have tried it out for a few swim runs, and it is just a little bit cumbersome where the technology is right now. having said that, seeing the improvements they made from like V1 of those to the Swim Straight 2, like the Swim Straight 5, you know, how small is that sensor going to be? How more range of motion or like peripheral vision are you going to have with the actual goggle piece? Like, I think as the technology improves, the sort of applicability to a swim run will also increase with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and we went to their headquarters when we were in Whistler, because they're headquartered in Vancouver. So it was really cool to kind of see their R&D and stuff, and they're certainly doing it. Like, they're really trying to push the edge of the envelope on this stuff, which is just really great. Again, I've been using them for training basically all year, and I don't think I could ever go back. I mean, forget about just counting lengths. I can't do that anymore for sure. Like, I couldn't tell you if I was swimming 200 or 1,000, because it's like I just don't have to think about that anymore, which allows you to really focus on your stroke and you know, whatever workout you're doing. So yeah, it's a game changer for sure on a training from the training side.
Definitely turned around in the morning when I knew that I forgot them to go back to my house and get them and then go back to the pool. So I think that speaks volumes.
yeah. Comfort goggles as well. But I wonder if they'll be used in future iterations of One Water Race, you know, as they become more tried and tested. But we'll see.
Yeah,
I guess.
I mean, I'm sorry for One Water Race. Definitely, some of these swims are like 6K and stuff. If you setting a bearing that far, I think would just be
especially
almost
at
like
night.
Safety,
at night,
you know, safety thing, just to be able to like kind of chart it out. Because some of those swims are just massive. And if especially at night, right? If you can just set your bearing and go, then at least you have a sense. I mean, you have your boat there and stuff, but at least you have a sense that you're going in the right direction.
Yeah. So I was just thinking back to the map when I was following the race, and just had another moment of how awesome those guys were. So big shout out, of course, to everyone on the start line.
God.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
when you see like
anyone just lining up for that thing is hero status.
Absolutely. Yeah, when you like, oh, there's like checkpoint 8 and you're like checkpoint 9 is there and it's just all water. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, that's a huge swim. Like, how are they doing that? I'm like looking, I'm like, oh, it's definitely, you know, in the middle of the night. So yeah, I think I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the name of the whatever, but yeah, it's like a 7K swim, and it's basically like on the second night. Which is just extra diabolical.
Yeah. Unbelievable race.
So cool. Well, have you got any more races planned this year, Chris and Chipper?
Well, I think with Chipper's injury, we're kind of a little wait and see schedule. We were supposed to do swimrun NC in North Carolina in October, and we're going to pull out of that one. We still have swimrun OtillO Austin in November, which we're really excited for that because it's likely going to be a longer course, so it'll be different than what we've done that race every year. They've done that race 4 years. We've just gone down there every year to do it because it's not that bad of a flight, and it's super fun. It's a great way to end the year. Anyone who wants like a warm sort of swim, you know, end of the season swim run, can't recommend it highly enough. But it's going to be longer this year just to make it a little bit more World Series-y, if that's a word.
Okay,
So that'll be fun, but it just depends on Chipper's injury, and you know, no pressure. You know, we're still a couple of dads, so it's not like you know, whatever he needs to do to heal and recover, that's what we're gonna do. And then
Chris is doing a solo race though, swimrun Cape Cod.
Yep, I'm doing swimrun Cape Cod in a couple weeks after a 50K that I'm doing the weekend before that, so that'll be fun. I used to live in Massachusetts for a long time, so it'll be nice to do a race there. I was actually out there last year to do the race, but there was a freaking hurricane that came through, which was a big bummer. So
right. And you've done a couple of solos before yourself, Chris? A little one or
no? So I've never done a solo race. So Chipper and I, we've both have done 21 swim runs total. During COVID, I did like a virtual swim run with a mutual friend of ours, Sandrine. We were called Team Untethered because that was like Chipper's rules, like don't tether. I'm like, all right, that's fine. And then Chipper did a solo race last year at Folsom Swim Run in California. Yeah. So,
Uh-huh.
so yeah, this will be my first solo race. And I think, in terms of just content for the show and my own swim run journey, I want to experience all the different ways you can experience swim run. So that's doing solo, that's doing mixed, and just kind of seeing what it's like. I mean, Chipper and I have been, really great friends and partners for a long time. I don't really see that changing anytime soon or
No,
ever.
no, no. Now he's
But yeah,
injured.
but there's
That's
so
it.
many different ways to experience the sport.
Yeah. Oh, I was joking though. I said
No,
now he's injured.
Yeah, now that I'm lame, Chris is gonna go find somebody a little bit more sturdy.
someone with two knees.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, good luck on the. So, is it the long course, the World Series course? Oh no, Cape Cod's not. It's not.
Yeah, it's not a World Series.
It's a medium
in fact,
course, I think.
Yeah, they have a short
Okay.
course and a medium course. I think it's
Okay.
like, I don't know,
It's probably like 12Ks or something.
12, 13
Who
Ks
knows?
total type of thing.
It could be anywhere between
But
10
yeah,
and
but
30.
it'll be fun.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. I mean, there's a lot of swim runners out there because it's, all those folks did Cape Cod, or did Casco Bay because it's, a couple states over. So the race sold out really quickly, which is amazing. I think that's what we want. And, we talk about it all the time, and we mention it when we talk to folks in the UK as well, right? It's this idea of like, you have to support your local swim runs. Like the only way this thing grows is by growing the base of it. And the base of it isn't OtillO, the Swim Run World Championship, right? The base of it is as keen as mustard, is we swim run events, is doing the back-to-back Wales, Wales weekend. It's doing these really local things because, those are the ones that just really help inspire what's possible. And yeah, seeing a hype, an OtillO hype video is awesome, or checking out one water race is awesome. But for a lot of people, it's just like, let's just get them in a kit. Let's get them doing a couple transitions and let them have a positive experience. And then really in our experience, at least from what we've seen, the rest kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Last thing, that's just reminded me, asking you about the distance there. I also think when we talked about the confusion in the names for distances is in swim run is probably the widest confusion gap, if you like. Whereas obviously in triathlon, it's very kind of set. Swim run, I'm doing a middle distance swim run. It could be 12 to 32K, because of all, that is a little bit, I don't mind it at all, of course, but I wonder if some people don't, get confused by that. I don't know.
I do think, I'm not trying to like knock OtillO or anything, but, having sprint not be the shortest one still trips me up a little bit. I think, there could be a little bit of a better way. I think World Series kind of, people hear that and like, okay, they kind of understand that might be on the upper end of things, but
like, that's the hard one.
Yeah, that's the hard one. But then sprint and experience, like, I get why experience is named it experience, because it's just, you're going to have a nice experience out there, 10Ks or something, but do something with the sprint seems a little bit too misleading potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of it comes down to just kind of like your mindset. I think, like you mentioned it, Mike's like, I'm okay with it. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's really trying to get them into the mindset of just like, hey, embrace the ambiguity. One of the great things about the sport is that you can't really put it into a box. You can't really export this thing like you can, like if it's an Olympic event, like the Olympic triathlon, like everyone knows what distance that's going to be. Everyone knows it's going to be a bunch of loops and stuff like that. I think with swim run, because you have to take what nature gives you and what the course allows you to do, whether it's at a lake course or a mountain course or an ocean course, or I don't even know, you name it, right?
Ponds.
An urban Liverpool course, which looks awesome, by the way, right? Just to be able to do something like with buildings around you is so cool. I know in Germany, they have like an urban swim run series, which is really popular. I think it's really just embracing that's really the cool thing about it. It's like, you never really know what you're going to get. I mean, when Chipper and I were doing triathlon, I mean, one of my favorite races was Escape from Alcatraz, because it was just like its own thing, right? It didn't fit into any category in terms of, whatever Olympic distance or, sprint or whatever. Right. So I think in that respect, it's something to celebrate, but it does require some explaining.
Yeah.
I do think that's why it is more, at least the people that are really into swim run, because it's not so set, it like removes the whole measuring stick aspect of it, of like, oh, Chris, you do triathlons, what's your half Ironman bike split? Like there's always this kind of like, oh, like measuring stick thing. And with swim run, it's an impossibility to even try to equalize all these different races. So that question isn't even on the table to ask. And I think for a lot of folks, it's really appealing, because it kind of takes off this like sort of energy, like, machoism sort of energy from it that is sometimes can be to turn people off in like the triathlon scene.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. 100%. And on that.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, and you kind of see in the World Championship as well.
Yeah.
Like, yes, that one is the same course, but year over year, you can have an awesome year, you can have, a 2017 year, and then followed by a 2018 year. Like there's all these different things that can happen, which make it interesting. In the US, so the Casco Bay course, that was one that would change every year. So even if you'd done the race before, it would be a completely different experience. The last few years has been sort of the same course, just because it's like a really good course now. And I think everyone realized that this course is ideal. So they just kind of kept it. But yeah, I think the fact that you can really, as Chipper mentioned, you can really only measure yourself against that race that day. So if you've done the race year over year, okay, now you have something to compare apples to apples. But really, every single race is going to be kind of a race of first impression, which leans into the adventure aspect, leans into the adventure racing roots of the sport, where like one water race, it's like you get your check. Once you get to the checkpoint, then you see where the next checkpoint is. Swimrun isn't as, most races aren't as wild as that, but that ethos is still there, which is just like, hey, we're racing whatever nature gives us today, and this is what it is.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. And
I do try to PR the poop swim every time, though.
Yeah,
I will say that is like as fast as I can do that one, I'm going.
Yeah. I think that, I didn't. Did you smell any? I didn't notice anything.
It smelled poopy.
Yeah.
It smelled poopy.
I lost my swim cap before that, so I went in with no swim cap, and all I can think is all the poop particles floating into my hair, and how cold my head was getting, because it was still pretty cold. I was like, oh, this is actually, the cap helps a lot, but then I was like, oh, there's going to be like poop in my hair. It's all I could think about.
Actually, I remember it vividly, where we're getting to the poop swim, and it's like, hey, the poop swim's coming up, and Chipper's like, I can't find my swim cap. I'm like, that sucks for you, bro.
Oh god!
Like there was no scenario where I was like, here, you can have mine. It's like, no. Yeah. That's a you problem.
Oh, fair enough. And on the different courses, OtillO I've done 5 times, and it's been different every time. And it's so it just and I think a lot of them are, as you say. There's a few smaller ones in the UK that are pretty set, but you're never quite sure they're set until race day. Race morning, it could change. So yeah, cool.
So Mike, let me ask you a question. I know this is your show, but I can't help myself. So tell us a little bit about so how has the UK scene been going this year? Are you happy with the races, and how is enthusiasm looking? I mean, it seems like it just continues to grow, sort of like unabated. But is that how it feels on the ground as a race director and participant?
I would say it's this year we've had more races, definitely, and more race directors, but possibly not an equivalent number of more participants. So there probably are more participants, but spread a little bit more thinly on the ground across all the races. It's still positive for sure. But it also feels for the planning as race directors, people entering quite late. I know a few race directors have spoken to have that. So yeah, it's still great. Yeah, it's still finding its place a little bit, and a few I don't know if all of them are going to survive. So yeah, it's going to be, but there's going to be more. So there's definitely going to be one in Scotland. somewhere in
Ooh.
Scotland next year.
Nice.
There's a new one in Northern Ireland, which is cool. Obviously, David had one on the South Coast, which was a big, quite a few
Yeah, that one
numbers.
sold out.
Yeah,
It was great.
yeah. So yeah, it's cool. It's positive. It was a kind of tester year for spreading out everyone.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, so it's all good. Still, it still feels like hard work sometimes to get the word out and get everybody on board. But
Yeah.
that's okay. It's great that you guys, I know a lot of people listen to you guys and have done, since you started, and you've helped a lot of people in the UK. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think, we can't end the show without giving you major props for starting your show. I mean, we've listened to all the episodes. It's great to have, just someone else doing it too.
Some other idiot.
And it's like, but it's hard work. And I think, no one knows that more than us, sort of the effort and dedication. And it's just thankless on some level to produce it. So yeah, just huge thank you from us for everything that you're doing to help grow the sport. There's obviously more room for more podcasts. We have the French podcast online, Listant Swimrun, which is great. And it just makes sense. I mean, it seems like, where there's burgeoning interest, it's, someone decides they want to take up to share some information. So, you decided to do that, and just like huge kudos for taking that on, because it's not easy. And I think, anyone who's listening who thinks this is just like a walk in the park, if Chipper and I were doing it solo, the show would be over.
Yeah, there's no way. Yeah.
Oh God. Well, thank you guys. And good luck in Cape Cod, Chris and Chipper.
Thank you.
Good luck with the knee. Was it the knee?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the knee.
Right knee.
What like a twist or like
some sort of twist thing? Yeah, my knee twisted one way and my body went the opposite way, sort of thing, which is not how you want
I
it
was
to go.
right there. It's like Chipper slipped on what was the slipperiest rock on planet Earth. I mean, this thing was like the slipperiest thing ever. Like, I don't know how something could get so slippery, but yeah, he stepped on it, and it was almost cartoonish how quickly he slipped and hurt himself. But we'll get him right.
Yeah, definitely. Good, brilliant, awesome. Well, guys, thank you very much. And hey, one day I'll get over to America and we'll do some swim running.
Sounds good.
Love it.
And we'll do the same. We're still
we'll
planning
get over there.
Sort of UK tour and see if we can line up a couple swim runs.
Yes, do it. Okay, guys, all the best. Thank you.
Right, cheers.
A great chat there with Chris and Chipper. Really enjoyed that one. I, of course, enjoy talking about swimrun with anyone really, but particularly Chris and Chipper, who led the way, unbelievably enthusiastic, and led the way in terms of podcasting for swimrun by, the original guys. Check them out if you've not seen their podcast or listened to it. They do video too, as well, of course. But yeah, I'm sure you've heard of the Low Tide Boys. So yeah, some great stuff on their pod. What else has happened? Well, you know what's happening. Loads of stuff, not least the World Champs in a couple of weeks. So without any more chitty chatter, I'm going to close down the pod.